Fox News Alert making Donald Trump's presidency official. Right now, electors in New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, and West Virginia are among the first and now the very well-known Electoral College to meet in their state capitals. Their job on this Monday is to choose a new president. But Democrats are launching a last-ditch effort to deny President-elect Donald Trump the White House. How is that going to go? This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Meghan McCain, Fox News political and legal analyst Ebony Williams, National Review reporter Catherine Tempf, and today's #OneLuckyGuy, the host of Making Money with Charles Payne on the Fox Business Network. Charles Payne himself, outnumbered, and he's wearing some frogs.
Yes.
These are gorgeous.
You like this? Yeah, I'm hoping
emerald.
that before the show's over, you guys would turn a frog into a prince.
Aww.
Yeah.
So then there'll be 3 princes, one on each sleeve and you in the middle. You're already a prince.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, shall we move?
Oh, let's do it.
Okay, let's start with the
to
news. Today, 538 members of the Electoral College are expected to ratify the election results of November 8th and elect Donald Trump, America's 45th president. 306 of them, as you may know, are pledged to Mr. Trump. 232 pledged to Hillary Clinton. Today's vote is seen as largely symbolic, but Republican electors say they've been inundated by emails, phone calls, and in some cases, death threats to change their votes. And this development, top Trump aides are accusing critics of trying to use today's vote drama to delegitimize Mr. Trump's presidency. Incoming White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus told Fox News Sunday the harassment has got to stop.
Look, we expect everything to fall in line. We've got one particular individual in Texas without a faithless elector statute in Texas, but other than that, we're very confident that everything is going to be very smooth tomorrow, and this harassment from groups like MoveOn.org and the Democrat Party should stop, and it's what the American people demand.
And as he is wont to do, President-elect Trump hit up social media to say he's being held to a double standard. On Twitter, he said, "If my many supporters acted and threatened people like those who lost the election are doing, they would be scorned and called terrible names." Doug McElway live with the news for us from Washington. Doug?
Good afternoon, Harris. As much as Democrats and many pundits are making a big deal of attempts to force electors to change their vote, the chances of that actually happening are slim indeed. In the history of the United States, electors have voted for the candidates of their choice 99% of the time. But then again, we've never seen in modern history the kind of tremendous pressure that's being put on GOP electors to change their vote or to become what is called faithless electors, many even receiving death threats.
Well, the worst thing is probably the most uncomfortable thing is one day I had a couple emails from the same person that said they were going to follow me and they were going to make us very uncomfortable. The next day on the freeway, I was actually looked to my right and I see people following me actually with their phone up against the window videoing. They slowed down behind. They got in front of my car. When I was at a traffic light, they were taking pictures.
Following death threats in Pennsylvania, some electors have even been offered police protection to cast their votes at the state capitol, where demonstrators, as you can see, are awaiting them. Still, only one GOP elector that we know of has pledged to change his vote. He's Chris Suprin from Texas.
Since I'm out, CIA had a report in the Washington Post that says that Russia was not trying to undermine our elections, but they were actively working to help Donald Trump become our president. For too long, Electoral College members have worked as a rubber stamp. Well, I'm going to tell you now, I will not be a rubber stamp for the Kremlin.
There are 538 electors in total, the same number as there are representatives in Congress, if you include the 3 electors from the District of Columbia. After their votes are tallied today in various state capitals, they'll be sent to the National Archives and to the House and Senate, where they will be counted and the winner announced on January 6th. The last step, of course, the swearing in of the new president on January 20th, and we fully expect that to be Donald Trump. Harris, back to you.
Doug, thank you very much. You know, Charles, as we look across the color spectrum, perhaps the new fall color for Democrats is desperate. This seems desperate, threatening people.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. This morning at the Union Square, people know it's a big train station in New York. There were 50,000 posters of people whining after the election, comparing it to 9/11. They've decided to put that away, and they're going to keep it in storage. Now the new thing is, forget whining. We're going to go on the offensive, even physically intimidating people who don't agree with us. Listen, We know it's all about delegitimizing the Donald Trump presidency, because even if for some crazy reason 37 electors say, hey, we're faithless, it would go to the House, controlled by the GOP, so Donald Trump would be the president. So in other words, what do they really want out of this? I had the misfortune of interviewing Christine Pelosi, and I got to tell you something. This is the most belligerent, arrogant, and I got to tell you, selfish act that I've seen in a for this to Donald Trump. Please accept the result of the election. They've certainly been big hypocrites.
And that's Nancy Pelosi's daughter, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree that it's desperate. It's pathetic. You know, it's over. It's over. Sometimes when it's over, you could be tempted, if you really don't want it to be over, to keep emailing and keep begging for it not to be over. But never works.
Are we still talking about the election?
We're talking about both. It
sounds like an ex-boyfriend I've had in college.
It's true. I learned, you know, I may have learned it from that, but it does apply here also.
All right.
It just makes you look pathetic. Doesn't change
Threats
the outcome.
didn't work?
Doesn't work, no.
In the mid-1800s was the last time that we saw more than one person stand up and flip their vote, become that faithless elector that you talked about, outside of the death of a candidate. It's been that long. It would be that rare for just not that one man in Texas that we publicly know about who said he's going to defy and not vote for Trump as he's pledged to do. He's going to do something different. If one other person joined him in doing that and flipping their vote, it would be legendary, historic. So obviously extremely rare. What are Democrats hoping to do?
Well, I think there's a lot of pressure from Hollywood. We talked about that PSA last week with Martin Sheen and Deborah Messing. Michael Moore is now saying that he will pay any fines for any electorate.
We've got that, actually,
okay,
his tweet. Let's pop that up. Let's pop up Michael Moore's tweet. Because, I mean, apparently, you know, when things go wrong, all these celebrities who threaten to leave the country now have just taken to Twitter.
I think it's really nothing more than a publicity stunt at this point, that they want to show that there's sort of like insolent protesting going on. But I would implore these Hollywood celebrities, as you just said, this would be historical, and I would say it would throw our democracy into chaos. And these people, if you know anything, even the most cursory knowledge of electorates, they have a lot of party loyalty. That's why they become electorates. That man that was we showed the clip of is the head of the RNC in Arizona that was getting harassed. These people, unless you have literally world-changing American history type news that shows why they should change their vote, it's just not going to happen.
So, Ebony, I come to you for the law.
That makes me happy, Harris.
Because, I mean, you're representing the bench, if you will.
Thank you.
So my question for you is that none of this behavior is legal. You cannot threaten anybody in this way. This is not free speech. So what would you say as an attorney?
Sure. So as we're listening to all of this kind of rhetoric and all the heightened emotions, the thing that stuck out to me most in what we're hearing are the fact that people are riding in their cars, many of them with their families, their children, who knows, and they are being threatened, Harris, and that is a real criminal act. We cannot have any tolerance for it, regardless of your political opinions, regardless of how frustrated and upset you might be at this election result. Elections do have consequences. We hear that over and over again, and this is the result. And instead of taking this time and really reflecting as a party on what went wrong, what could have been done better, what lessons you can learn for 2018 and 2020, you're wasting all kinds of important and valuable time trying to delegitimize. But I will say this around hypocrisy. I don't cry that many tears for President-elect Trump around the issue of delegitimizing, because he did spend considerable time trying to delegitimize the presidency of Barack Obama. He has since apologized for it and moved on from it. But that delegitimizing, it helps no one. And I really hope we can all take a lesson from that.
Well, and we didn't see, you know, back then people doing what they're doing now.
No, that's
not
a different
publicly
thing.
trying to change the electoral college results,
Sure.
so on and so forth. All right, we'll move on. There are growing calls to widen the probe into whether Russia hacked and influenced our election. A bipartisan group of senators is asking for a temporary select committee to investigate cyber attacks. Senator Chuck Schumer of New York explained why the intelligence community cannot get it done alone.
First, things could be left out. There could be holes that no committee covers. Second, we could get contradictory information. The FBI says this, the CIA says that, and they're not reconciled. And third, the existing committees are very, very busy. A select committee whose only focus is to get to the bottom of this is what is called for.
Meanwhile, incoming White House Chief of Staff, again, we'll hear from Reince Priebus, who says on Fox News Sunday President-elect Trump would be open to the findings of the intel community on one condition.
I think he would accept the conclusion if these intelligence professionals would get together, put out a report, show the American people that they're actually on the same page, as opposed to third parties through the Washington Post. Right, but we haven't heard from Clapper. But we haven't heard from Comey. I mean, so look, I think that these guys should be straight with the American people and come out and say it.
And John Podesta, who was the chairman of Hillary Clinton's failed presidential bid, weighed in on all of it.
Nick Kristof wrote this morning in the New York Times that it's not that Putin and Trump were colluding to affect the election. It's that the Russians were trying to elect a lapdog. But I would argue that it's very much unknown whether there was collusion. So I think really not what Mr. Trump knew, but what did Trump Inc. know and when did they know it? Were they in touch with the Russians? I think those are still open questions.
Wow, I never knew that the Democrats could make 300 million people vanish. But by doing this, they were ignoring our own safety. They're so focused on politics.
I don't know why Podesta doesn't go away. That was a pathetic interview yesterday. And just, again, here's the thing. It wasn't the hacks. It was what was revealed by the hacks. Okay, and what America learned is that the Democratic Party, who had advertised themselves to be one thing, proved to be something else when they thought they were only talking amongst themselves. They proved to be biased. They proved to be mean-spirited. They proved to be underhanded. Ask Bernie Sanders supporters. I mean, they proved to be almost everything that they said the Republicans were. That was proven mostly through Podesta's emails. So it's embarrassing that he would actually get up there and continue this argument instead of hiding under a rock, because one thing's for sure, the Russians did not decide who became the president. Okay, now if you want to say the emails, guess what? Those emails were in the word to the Democrats, and they never denied that.
You know, Megan, as we look at the total picture, President Obama was talking about President Putin of Russia. And maybe you're talking about revelations that came from emails. How about revelations from the president? Let's watch that. I'm curious to get your take on it.
I felt that the most effective way to ensure that that didn't happen was to talk to him directly and tell him to cut it out. There were going to be some serious consequences if he didn't. And in fact, we did not see further tampering of the election process, but the leaks through WikiLeaks had already occurred. So when I look back in terms of how we handled it, I think we handled it the way it should have been handled. We allowed law enforcement and the intelligence community to do its job without political influence.
You told him to cut it out. Stop that hacking. That doesn't even work on my 7-year-old.
No, in all seriousness, that clip has been hard for me to watch because it does make a mockery of those of us who have taken Russia so seriously as an international threat towards our national security. Same man who joked to Mitt Romney's face that it was a 1980s foreign policy program. There's so many elements to this. I agree with what Reince Priebus said, that the American public needs an illumination on this. We want to know what you're talking about with these hacks. That being said, it breaks my heart that our national security is being politicized by people like John Podesta for their own gain. And my final thought is, I am having a really hard time with the idea that the American public has such a lack of faith in our national security, in our CIA, and our FBI. A lot of people have been tweeting me over the weekend because I tweeted, do we really believe WikiLeaks over the FBI at this point? One thing to that, and a lot of Americans do trust them instead. That faith
has been earned over a long period of time, particularly the CIA. Over 50 years, they've gotten so many things wrong, particularly more recently.
But you don't know what has gone on in the CIA. You don't know what our spies have done and stopped.
I'm not saying that they haven't done great things, but I do know from the Bay of Pigs on to more recently, they've squandered and missed a lot of great opportunities.
It's just so obviously political, though, because it's impossible for the Democrats to talk about it without mentioning the election or alluding to the election, when it's been people on the conservative side who have been saying, like you were saying, Megan, that Russia is something we need to be concerned about, and being mocked for saying Russia is something we need to be concerned about, until it becomes politically expedient, which is something that we saw in the emails themselves, too.
Yeah, and maybe not an accident that, you know, the American public would have hired, if you will, a president to deal with Russia who obviously has some strong thoughts about dealing with Russia.
Absolutely. I'll say, for me, it's a really big problem that we are connecting two really important things that really shouldn't be connected in this political way, right? There's the issue of cybersecurity and the hack, and that's important. And we're seeing bipartisan calls from across all spectrums to get to the bottom of this. And hopefully President-elect Trump will accept a consistent place around knowing really what that's about. Then the other side is the electoral conclusion around it. And that's the problem, right? For so many people, they don't want to believe the nature of what's going on with the hack in Russia because it depended upon a particular conclusion.
I
think people are connecting.
They are, but I shouldn't be. Your take on this. How did we get there? How did we get there? I mean, who legitimately believes that anything having to do with the hacking investigation that could take months or years would stop the electoral process that's going on in capitals right this hour?
Well,
who believes that?
From Podesta and things like this, right, that are saying this is why we shouldn't trust this election result. Of course, but I'm saying that's very problematic. It shouldn't be, Charles. That's kind of my point.
Just to put a button on this, though, my biggest problem is you can believe that Russia committed espionage on this country and believe Hillary Clinton was a horrible, flawed candidate. It didn't go to Wisconsin. They're not mutually exclusive. And John Podesta is trying to do it, as Kat pointed out, for
we must detach those, because as long as those are attached to one another, you're going to have people not paying attention to really important things.
Okay, we got to scoot. While some Hillary Clinton insiders have blamed Russian hackers for her election loss, as we were just saying, now some of them are reportedly pointing fingers at her top aide, Uma Abedin. Oh, all wheels of the bus is being thrown under. And others in Hillary's tight inner circle. But is their goal to blame anyone but Hillary? Plus, New York Times columnist Paul Krugman suggesting President-elect Donald Trump may want a terrorist attack to earn political points. Did he go too far? And is this what the mainstream media consider fair analysis? Right after the show, join us. We pop up live online, foxnews.com/outnumbered. Click on the Overtime tab. And Facebook Live, our handle, Outnumbered FNC. We're coming right back. Now with this Fox News alert on a situation that's been unfolding for the better part of an hour. This is Ankara, Turkey, and we knew that among those who potentially were hurt by a gunman who opened fire inside of a photograph exhibition there that was going on, Russia's ambassador to Turkey was shot. The Russian Foreign Ministry has confirmed that he was shot, not immediately saying anything about his condition. We are receiving some different reports. As we firm those up, we'll bring you what we know confirmed. Turkish police shot and killed the gunman, and that has been all over Turkish TV. But what you're watching right now is all of the aftermath outside this exhibition of photography in Ankara, Turkey. Bystanders say they heard at least 8 shots fired. And according to an AP photographer who was in the audience, he heard someone in a suit and tie say Allahu Akbar. So that's according to the Associated Press's photographer who was in the audience of this. So again, as we firm up the exact condition of Russia's ambassador to Turkey there, we'll let you know. In breaking news right here on Fox News. Megan?
Some Hillary Clinton advisors are appearing to find a new scapegoat for her election loss after first blaming FBI Director James Comey and then Russia. Now Vanity Fair reports some in Hillary land are pointing fingers at Clinton's inner circle, particularly her closest aide, henchwoman Huma Abedin. It clipped my nickname. A Clinton advisor saying about Huma, quote, she was enjoying the red carpet and enjoying the photo spreads much too much, in my opinion. She enjoyed being a celebrity too much, and that the tight-knit group was dismissive of new ideas, saying, quote, the real anger is toward Hillary's inner circle. They list all the bad habits, but a Clinton campaign spokesperson denying that. Suggestions had fallen on deaf ears. Kat, I'm going to go to you first. So I have talked about Huma Abedin and how I thought she was really a bad influence on Hillary Clinton and bad for her. She went to the Met Ball. She loved red carpet. She's a celebrity in and of herself. On campaign land, that's a really bad thing to do. What do you make of the blame being put on her?
I think she has some blame. Hillary surrounded herself with yes people that weren't going to tell her no, which is always going to be a problem because sometimes all of us need to be told no. But it's still her fault for surrounding herself with those people. It's her fault for not being the kind of person who could accept criticism or could surround herself with people who might be able to help her. Again, though, we see people blaming everybody but themselves, which is, of course, a comfortable thing to do, and it might make you feel better, but you do need to look at yourself to avoid making the same mistakes in the next election or, relationship. All, again, same thing.
I would say, go ahead.
I look back on the anniversary of 9/11 and we saw Hillary Clinton standing on the curb before she passed out and they whisked her away to her daughter's apartment. We didn't know what had happened. 90 minutes later, where has this presidential candidate gone? Is she okay? What has happened with her? We later learned out she had pneumonia. I mean, like more than a week later. My point of all of that is at the time, Clinton insiders were telling me that normally Huma Abedin would have been there to handle all of that. She wouldn't have been standing on the curb by herself waiting for the ride to show up. So that there were probably some unbreakables in that deal, like deal breakers. Uma comes along with Hillary no matter what, and you see the gaps that can happen when she's not there. So these people in the inner circle and others can complain all they want, but she played a role.
I don't know, Harris. Absolutely, she played a role. But personally, I'm just so sick of everybody but Hillary being thrown under the bus for Hillary's demise. And ultimately, it is on her because she's selected. Huma is not new, right? She's been around for many, many, many years around the Clinton inner circle, and Hillary had at her disposal the who's who of Democratic Party elites. She could have put anyone in that role. She picked Huma. So she knew what the tendencies were, that she was going to love celebrity and love the red carpet and love that aspect of political life.
And be married to Anthony Weiner.
Somebody needed to be able to drive her to the hospital.
Yeah, and I think that if she wanted that person there, she should have had that person, but she didn't pick that person. I think it was for a reason. You got to take the good with the bad when it comes to
James
Huma.
Comey reinvestigated their emails because of her husband's server.
Right.
Exactly. So there is legitimate blame to be placed on this staffer.
Huma was absolutely terrible. And by the way, that's the only job Huma Abedin has had. The only job, to my knowledge, that she's ever had was working for Hillary Clinton. So Hillary Clinton was able to mold this person to be her offensive line, if you will. But again, ultimately, the blame goes to Hillary Clinton, perhaps one of the worst candidates, certainly in my lifetime. But Huma does represent one thing, that Manhattan elitism that could never understand the iron worker in Ohio who's been out of work for 6 years. That sort of circle that could never connect the dots, that would think she wouldn't have to visit Wisconsin. I remember when Donald Trump landed his plane in Minnesota and he said to the crowd, Hillary hasn't been out here. Something went through me. I said, what? It was like a couple days before the election. She hasn't even, I mean, to take this election for granted that she could spend all of August in the Hamptons, the whole thing was all elitist. It blew up in their face. And I think Huma's a good poster child for it, but the better one is Hillary.
Yeah, and you know who's the opposite of that kind of elitism is Bill Clinton. He's such a kind of southern down-home kind of candidate. As a candidate,
I think he's morphed a little bit. I think he knows how to play the role.
I think he knows how to campaign that way.
Well, he's a much better campaigner.
Right, and I heard from Clinton insiders, to Harris's point, that he was constantly ignored at every turn.
Yeah, he's such a good
he certainly would have picked her up at the curb.
But he's such a good campaigner when he's talking about what a disaster Obamacare is. He's not that great of a campaigner. If we were in the things of the 90s are not the Clintons of today's, and I wish they would just go away.
Most things have moved on since the 90s.
President-elect Donald Trump tweeting out that China can keep that drone it seized, but we're told it's going to be returned tomorrow, whether the president-elect is handling that situation the best way. Plus, Mr. Trump pushing back on claims made by Michelle Obama during an interview with Oprah Winfrey. She said Americans are lacking a sense of hope after the election. The First Lady's message and whether it's time for her to come to terms with the results of the election.
We want to catch you up now on the very latest on this breaking news on Fox News. Russia's foreign ministry now has confirmed that their ambassador to Turkey has died from his wounds. We told you moments ago, and we've been covering for about an hour here on Fox News, that he was shot and killed by a gunman inside of a photography exhibition in Ankara, Turkey. And we understand that he was several minutes into a speech when this happened. People obviously in panic, running, trying to escape. And in the aftermath of all of this, we have learned that their ambassador to Turkey has passed away. A couple of details. The Associated Press had a presence inside this event. One of those people was a photographer who said that he heard a man in a suit and tie scream Ali Akbar, and then at least 8 shots ring out. We're following the story. As we learn more from Turkey, we'll bring it to you. And now to politics at home. New developments in China's seizure of a U.S. drone. 2 U.S. defense officials are telling Fox News they expect the Chinese to return the Navy's underwater drone tomorrow. This after President-elect Donald Trump tweeted over the weekend. China steals United States Navy research drone in international waters, rips it out of the water, and takes it to China in unprecedented act. And then we should tell China that we don't want the drone they stole back. Let them keep it. A spokesperson for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says they didn't like the word steal, and that when they found the device, they did an investigation to ensure what it was and whether it was really belonging to the United States. Charles is laughing. Meanwhile, Senator John McCain criticized the Obama administration over the incident. He suggests its policies are emboldening countries like Iran and now China.
The fundamental here is that the Chinese have taken an American vehicle and in international waters in a gross violation of international law. There's no strength on the part of the United States of America. Everybody's taking advantage.
Defense officials say the same Chinese ship which took the drone will return it. We're told there's no indication the research drone ever left that ship. Charles, you were laughing. Why?
Well, here's the thing. They're going to return it. The big question is, will it be in pieces or will they bother to put it back together, okay? Last week, one thing that went unnoticed was Iran actually unveiled a new aerial attack drone that was made from a drone they had captured from the United States. Of course, John McCain is correct. The belligerent actors of the world have gone roughshod over America and the world because of a feckless President Obama who thinks foreign policy, we saw it earlier in the show, cut it out. It doesn't work. So anyway, China's going to have their way with this drone, take it apart. We'll see it again. Unfortunately, it may be used against it somewhere down the road.
Yeah. So why tell them to keep it?
Well, I mean, the first thing that we're missing, and I don't want to not point out the pink elephant in the room, is that the misspelling of unprecedented was all over Twitter all weekend. I think he spelled it president like president instead of CED. But I think internationally what people are learning is that a new sheriff is in town. And as you pointed out, the last 8 years of Iranian soldiers making our soldiers tuck down and put their hands above their head, that's all going to end. And these unique moments of aggression from China, I think at some point it is going to hit a fever pitch.
Yeah, this is interesting too, because we know that Donald Trump took that phone call from the Taiwanese president, and we know that China had just encircled that island nation with fighter planes. So this feels like another chapter.
Yeah, and I'm not mad at that. I agree. For whatever you think of the last 8 years, I'm a voter of President Obama, but highly critical of mainly his national security leadership. I think it's been pretty poor. And so I'm very interested and intrigued and very willing to see what this leadership will look like under President-elect Trump. Because Charles says, new sheriff in town. Let's see what it looks like. When he says y'all can keep it, it sounds kind of crazy, but in a way, maybe he's saying, you know what? It's not that crazy, right?
Well, the bottom line is they've opened it up, they've looked at it, they've copied it.
You've already got the best of it.
Look, it's a little crazy to tweet it, okay? I mean, I criticize people when they put their relationship drama on Facebook or on Twitter, like, yeah, well, you can just keep it. I don't want that back anymore. And he's talking about, like, country to country drama. Yeah. So if it's inappropriate on a personal level, and this is certainly an inappropriate way to deal with it, especially if you're too enraged to make sure you're spelling stuff right. It's just not a good look. You need to look like you're being more careful.
Autocorrect.
It doesn't matter. It's not, Twitter's not the place for these kinds of
I do want to say, though, this is starting to make, it feels to me like a Ronald Reagan moment when he came in. Of course, the Iranian hostage crisis, that we've got some serious crises that are going to meet Donald Trump on day one. Serious foreign policy crisis that must be addressed on day one.
But I think our enemies are going to learn the very difficult way that the years of cut it out are well over.
They're going to have to learn.
Yes.
And they're going to, some will test us like a China. So be ready for an early test.
All right now. Donald Trump pushing back on claims that the country is lacking a sense of hope following his November election victory. First Lady Michelle Obama making the controversial comments during her final White House interview with Oprah Winfrey. She's taking an indirect swipe at the president-elect by pitting him against her husband's former campaign slogan.
Now we're feeling what not having hope feels like. You know, hope is necessary. It's a necessary concept. And Barack didn't just talk about hope because he thought it was just a nice slogan to get votes. I mean, he and I and so many believe that what else do you have if you don't have hope?
Although Mr. Trump was not particularly critical of the First Lady's comments, he did make a point to counter them in his rally in Alabama on Saturday. Let's watch.
Michelle Obama said yesterday that there's no hope. But I assume she was talking about the past, not the future, because I'm telling you, we have tremendous hope, and we have tremendous promise and tremendous potential. So I honestly believe she meant that statement in a different way than it came out, because I believe there is tremendous hope, and beyond hope, we have such potential. This country has such potential. You watch. It's going to be so special.
Okay, Charles, a few things. Harris is saying it during the clip. He seems to very much be going out of his way to give her the benefit of the doubt, really reframing it for her in a way that I'm not sure many of us felt that she did mean it. So questions around that. And secondly, this. She is the First Lady of the United States, but she's also a human being. She's an American. Does she have a right to say her opinion and an opinion that is reflected by some in this country, or as First Lady, is that out of bounds?
No, well, I think she was out of bounds in the sense that she was speaking and for we, assuming all of Americans, and Obviously, she hasn't been paying attention to the size of the rallies. Obviously, she didn't pay attention to all of the counties that her husband won twice that Donald Trump won. Obviously, she didn't pay attention to the stock market. Obviously, she hasn't paid attention to consumer sentiment surveys, manufacturing surveys, or the housing survey that came out last month with the biggest jump in buyer traffic since July of 2005. Obviously, she's not paying attention to certain things, and I think that's irresponsible as First Lady. You can be upset and sad and all of those things, but you can't say that the country has been stripped of hope. Maybe certain people have.
Certain people.
But the country overall is on a very hopeful path right now and a very optimistic path right now.
Harris.
Yeah, you know, I mean, we're heading into one of the holiest times on the Christian calendar, and I'm ecumenical in my household, so, you know, I'm thinking of the Judeo calendar and observances now too. Without hope, I think of things like what's going on in Syria, the Holocaust, the pogroms. I think of a lot of things without hope. A country whose electoral college is about to say that it was legitimate on November 8th to elect Donald Trump, and actually putting that into motion does not bleed hopelessness to me. I'm confused by what she means. And my mom used to say that if you see a problem, that means you're obligated to help. So is she going to stand up and help? What is she going to do about it?
That's a great point, Kat. It also represents that Democrats continuing to be out of touch with the same group of people that voted for Trump, which is why they lost. Some people are feeling like there's no hope because of Donald Trump going to be the president, but some people are feeling hope for the first time in a long time. A lot of the people in those flyover states who haven't had their concerns addressed by President Obama and the administration before that. So sure, some people are feeling hopeless, but to say all Americans, like you were saying, if this continues, Democrats are going to keep losing because some people have more hope than they've ever had.
Megan, let's talk about those people, though. Some absolutely optimistic. We see the markets going, doing awesome. But some people legitimately don't have hope because of Donald Trump. Can Michelle Obama speak to that group? Is that okay for you?
So my issue, I actually watched this whole interview because I'm just fascinated by her last exit interview, and in the context, thought the setting was a little weird. But she goes on to talk about how gracious the Bushes were when she left office, and how gracious Laura Bush was, and how much influence she had, and how much advice she gave, and the advice she was giving to Melania Trump. And I find it strange that the Bushes, who I think can be put as an icon of how to behave out of office, that they haven't even left yet, and she's already talking smack about our new president. And or about his supporters at least. And I think it's really tone deaf for where we are as a country. I think it's really important for the transition of power that they put on a good face and say, this is what America wants. This is our democratic process in action. I think this is the first indicator of what they're going to be like out of office. I've said it on this couch before. I'll say it again. He's going to be the most angry, upset, bitter ex-president. He will be doing his first Slow Jam interview with Jimmy Fallon 2 weeks out of office, and he will be on cable news at length critical of Donald Trump.
You're not at all hopeful around what seems to be a pretty positive relationship between at least Donald and President Obama right now.
I think at the moment, but your first lady isn't going on television saying there's war without hope. If there's some sort of, if everything is peachy and you're excited, they would not be saying this about Hillary Clinton. And as Charles pointed out, I think it's incredibly tone deaf for the tone of the country right now after such a historic election. And I just think going forward, I wish they would take a page out of the book of what the Bushes have done, because I think they have conducted themselves with such class and sophistication. And I'm not saying they can't, but President Bush has not heard one negative thing about Obama, to my knowledge, his entire 8 years in office.
Well, I will continue to be hopeful, Megan, around their ability to do that. Right. A New York Times columnist taking heat for suggesting President-elect Trump would have a, quote, incentive to allow a terror attack on American soil. So did Times columnist Paul Krugman cross the line? And is this the kind of media bias we can expect for the next 4 years?
Yeah.
Welcome back. New allegations of bias in the media. Well-known New York Times columnist Paul Krugman appeared to suggest President-elect Donald Trump would welcome another terror attack to help him politically. He tweeted this: "Thought there was, rightly, a cloud of illegitimacy over Bush, dispelled, wrongly, by 9/11. Create some interesting incentives for Trump," end quote. Mr. Trump responded bluntly at a thank you rally over the weekend.
They had a clown today in the failing New York Times who said that I wanted to have another World Trade Center catastrophe because it's good for my base. Can you believe this? No, think of it. Think of it. What kind of a demented person would say that? No, think of it. Thousands of people killed. Anybody that says that, and this guy is demented. He's a demented person. And that's why the Times is failing.
One clown and two dementeds. So then later, Krugman walked back his comments. Well, sort of. He tweeted, "No, it won't be a false flag terrorist attack. Too hard and no need. It will either exploit a real terrorist attack or involve a U.S. version of the Falklands War, picking a fight with foreign power to rally home base. Iraq had some elements of that," end quote. Charles, this guy has a lot of free time.
Well,
something.
You know, it's amazing that he got economics wrong for like 3 decades, and now they let him go out to the political world. It's mean-spirited what he said. It's the scary stuff that someone would be thinking this way and then have the nerve to put it out there. That somehow, listen, we do know that during the election, whenever there were attacks in this country, it underscored a policy that wasn't working, a policy for Barack Obama and one that Hillary Clinton was buying into. And that's helped Donald Trump because people were saying, you know what, maybe we need to be tougher. Maybe we need to move away from some historic norms with respect to immigration and other things and be tougher with certain people from certain areas if we want to stay safe and alive. That's a lot different than saying as president, you want to see a 9/11 style attack.
What category these days are we putting Paul Krugman in? Are we including
Nuts,
him in
crazy,
No, but seriously, are we looking at him as like an op-ed artist? Is he a journalist or what? Because
again, he started out as an economist. I think he's been totally bad and wrong on the economy, and then
like notoriously wrong, correct?
Notoriously wrong, and now he's a columnist slash whatever, you know.
It's weird how you can make a career out of that, just being wrong over and over.
Harris, you're actually pointing out a really good thing, which is we now have to recategorize these people that used to all be thought of as journalists, and we now know that doesn't apply to a lot of these people, a lot of this. But the American people, I think, unfortunately, are not being given that gift of saying this is an op-ed person, this is an objective journalist, this is, and I want to say one more thing. The reset that President-elect Trump has continuously tried, at his credit, to do with the New York Times and these different, it's all for nothing, right? It's all for nothing because at every turn there continues to be this type, and it's fine if he's an op-ed guy and this is his thing, he has every right to say